and thank you for coming today. I am New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, and I'm here to talk about a landmark settlement that was agreed to yesterday afternoon that will hold JPMorgan Chase accountable for damage done to the American economy for their participation in the misconduct that inflated the housing bubble and led to the crash of the housing market and to the Great Recession, from which we're still seeking to recover. The $13 billion agreement was entered into is far and away the largest agreement entered into in the history of the United States, and the relief provided, it's a good agreement for the United States, it's a great agreement for the people of the state of New York. Not only has JPMorgan acknowledged misconduct on its own, by its own employees, but it also has acknowledged that the employees of Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual, two other entities it acquired, engaged in similar misconduct. So the settlement really is a vindication of the strategy that I've been pursuing on this, and some of you represent publications that were skeptical in 2011 when I was holding out and didn't want to sign on to a deal the other state attorneys general were trying to close. And I had substantial pressure put on me to sign on to that deal, which would essentially have given the banks a pass on all of this misconduct that produced the crash. I went at it with folks in Washington in the Obama administration. They came around, and in January of 2012, I got what I had asked for, which was that the President in the State of the Union address announced the formation of an unprecedented state-federal working group to look at the causes of the crash of the residential mortgage-backed securities market that created this devastating blow to our economy and really to the American people. $7.4 trillion in home equity was lost. That was where the wealth of the American middle class was, and the equity in their homes. So I determined that we were going to pursue this, and with my federal counterparts, we have pursued it. This settlement is just the first step in seeking justice on behalf of homeowners all across the United States. With me today are Kirsten Keefe, the senior staff attorney with the Empire Justice Center, one of our critical partners in this effort, and Susan Cotner, executive director of the Affordable Housing Partnership. They're among the leaders of more than 90 organizations of legal services providers and housing counselors that we have funded using the money from the first settlement we got, and they're helping New Yorkers who were victimized by unscrupulous lenders. We made a decision after we got the releases narrowed so that we could pursue the banks for their pre-crash misconduct, to use the funds from the servicing settlement initially to ensure that every New Yorker has a housing counselor or an attorney. When I took office, 345,000 New Yorkers were facing, New York families were facing foreclosure, and we learned that half of them never had a chance to talk to a lawyer or a housing counselor at any stage of the process. We determined to fix that, and we have fixed it. With the money for the first settlement, we committed $60 million to these programs. We will be able to expand our support for these programs with the funds from the settlement we executed yesterday. I'm going to talk a little bit about the settlement because there are a lot of parts of it that no one has really focused on yet that are of particular interest, I think, to New Yorkers. The first component of the settlement that is of special interest to New Yorkers is that we are getting over $600 million that is to be dedicated to programs to support homeowners, and we've done creative things already with the funds for from the first settlement, funding legal services, funding what we call our homeowner protection program, our network of HOP providers, and we issued a report very recently that it's here somewhere here that showed the results of our request for proposal, who had gotten what money. And we're going to continue to issue reports showing what we're doing. But I can tell you that New Yorkers are doing much better than it was ever projected we would do because we have this network of HOP counselors. When we entered settlement number one, HUD projected that New York homeowners would get about $600 million worth of relief. Because we invested in the infrastructure to help New York homeowners deal with the banks so they don't have to go in alone. We've actually gotten around $2 billion in relief from that first settlement. We look for far more relief with the settlement that was announced yesterday. So the largest settlement in history sounds big, it sounds great, but I want to call attention to the special provisions for New York. In addition to the $613 million we got in cash, the consumer relief provisions, which they have committed to $4 billion worth of consumer relief, principal reductions for homeowners, other benefits for homeowners, we were able to get into the deal some things that are particularly important to New York. First, another one of the important things we did after setting up the HOP network was that we realized that there had been legislation passed to let local governments set up land banks, very important vehicles for dealing with blight in neighborhoods that have been hurt by the foreclosure crisis, but there was no money for it. So we've funded those land banks, and are continuing to seek applications from local governments, and we expect to fund more land banks and to fund land banks better. These banks enable the local government to buy up abandoned homes. Abandoned homes create all sorts of problems. It's not just the family that lost their home. If you have a couple of abandoned homes on your block, the whole block loses property value. There's an increase in crime traceable to this. It undermines the tax base. So now, all across New York State, local governments will be able to buy up these properties and to rehabilitate them and resell them, or in the cases of some cities where they don't want them there anymore, Buffalo has been tearing down buildings and creating park space or urban agriculture. Either one of those. Now, in the agreement signed yesterday, we did something very unusual. Chase, and among other items they get credit for, is getting credit for donating those abandoned homes to the land banks. So this is something that even expands what land banks are going to be able to do, because this is going to increase the number and reduce the cost for these efforts. The second thing that is in the agreement that really hasn't been focused on is that we did manage to get a provision in that will enable victims of Superstorm Sandy to get even better discounted loans from Chase. And that was very important to us. And I think it's defined, it doesn't say Sandy, but it's defined as FEMA impacted areas between October 2012 and today. So I think you all can figure out what that relates to. So our mandate in the working group was to look into this misconduct in the pooling of mortgages, the marketing of mortgage-backed securities, and the sale of mortgage-backed securities. It's important to understand, in addition to what this deal does do, what this deal does not do. This deal does not give JPMorgan Chase any individual actors immunity from future criminal prosecutions. It does settle some civil actions, but the federal investigations into criminal misconduct continue. This is, in my view, a critically important step in restoring confidence in our financial system. There is got to be a message that no one is too big to be held accountable under the law. It's critical to public confidence. When I was in private practice, I represented a lot of securities firms. I believe in American markets. I believe they should be the strongest, most transparent in the world. The public has lost confidence in that. They think Wall Street's a rigged casino. So while we're being pretty tough on the banks, we're actually doing something that's going to benefit them all in the long run. And I commend, in fact, JPMorgan Chase for having the vision to be the first bank to enter into such a settlement. Other banks will follow. There are more big paydays to come, but Chase was smart enough to realize that there is value for them in what I've been calling the peace premium. They are the first bank to be able to say, we've put pretty much all of this stuff behind us. They also just entered into a major settlement with their largest private plaintiffs seeking recovery for this, the mortgage-backed securities collapse. So I'm glad that a good New York institution has led the way. Look forward to working with them going forward. And again, this is just one bank. My colleagues in the working group and I will continue our investigations. We will continue to pursue other institutions. We can now take the resources that were dedicated to Bear Stearns, Washington Mutual, and JPMorgan, put them on, direct them at other targets, and accelerate the process of drafting complaints, conducting investigations in order to get other banks to the table. And I want to thank again our partners in making sure New York homeowners are safe who are with me. And to do that, I'd first like to turn the microphone over to Kirsten Keefe.
Thank you. So I want to really congratulate Attorney General Eric Schneiderman and maybe even more so thank him for your really critical role in reaching this truly historic settlement. A $13 billion agreement is by far the largest settlement that I've seen in the 15 years that I've been working in this industry with a mortgage lender. And this settlement is historic not only because of its dollar amount, but it's the first settlement that we've seen that really acknowledges the culpability of one of the world's largest investment banks for misrepresentations made to investors. The consumer relief portions of the settlement that I'm most interested in have been carefully crafted with options that are really targeted to keeping families in their homes. The settlement improves upon the great relief that has already been provided through the National Mortgage Settlement and really will ensure thousands of homeowners receive principal reductions on both their first and second lien mortgages. There is a misperception that New York is through the worst of the foreclosure crisis, but unfortunately this absolutely is not the case. Rather, it's predicted that there will be over 44,000 foreclosure filings in the next year, which returns New York to the foreclosure filing numbers of a few years ago and to some of our highest levels ever. Principal reduction and the components that are achieved through this settlement are so critical to keeping homeowners in their homes. It's critical to keeping folks in their properties that have depreciated as a direct result of the financial crisis that has caused so many homeowners throughout New York State to owe more than what is actually the true value of their home. Principal reduction also rights a lot of the wrongs. In the heyday of the subprime lending crisis, one of the most egregious predatory practices was inflated appraisals that were also often driven by the lenders themselves. So we see a lot of homeowners that ended up being sold loans that far exceeded the true value of the house. So the principal reduction component will right those wrongs. And it will also help homeowners who have lost jobs as a result of the financial crisis, who can afford their home, but they are making less than they were making pre-crisis, by lowering the amount that they owe and allowing them to be able to enter into a truly affordable modification. The timing of this settlement is incredibly fortuitous considering the fact that New York is predicted to go back into another foreclosure wave. Keeping people in their homes is immeasurably important to families, but it is also critical for neighborhood stabilization. This settlement with Chase is also historic because it recognizes the harm done by the reckless behavior of Chase, not just to families, but to our communities. The settlement dedicates funding to address problems of vacant properties and community blight, as the Attorney General has described. Every community in upstate New York has been grappling with these issues. Municipalities and community development nonprofits have identified great solutions that can be implemented on the local level, but they've lacked the funding to put the wheels in motion. I really commend the Attorney General for recognizing these needs already, seen by the grants that he has given to the land banks, and for continuing to push for dedicated funding for these activities moving forward. There is no question that the relief afforded by this settlement for homeowners and our communities will be far-reaching. Again, I congratulate and thank the Attorney General for being a true leader in the nation and for not letting the bad actors escape liability. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to hear from one of our HOP grantees, Susan Cotner.
Thanks. Susan Cotner, Affordable Housing Partnership, but also speaking really on behalf of the Home Save Coalition, which is a really wonderful network of housing counseling agencies and legal service providers working here in the greater capital region. So again, we're thrilled to be here to learn about this fantastic settlement. Last month, 1,800 Capital Region homeowners received from their bank a notice of their intent to foreclose on them, and that has been a very consistent number throughout the years, 1,500, 1,600 1,800 households. And interestingly, Chase has been one of the top 5 foreclosing entities. Interesting because they don't have a lot of bricks and mortar branches here. They're buying investments and securities, and the capital region has really suffered as a result. Foreclosures affect everyone from every single walk of life. You have today, I know, to get here, driven past that vacant building, you know, the place where the lawn was not mowed this summer, or the boarded up house, right, because the windows were broken into so they could steal the copper pipes. And now our neighborhoods are grappling with how do we find the funding to really restore our communities and to keep our own property values strong. So again, we're thrilled with this settlement because of the potential for the resources to get to the communities to be able to move forward and beyond this crisis. So again, in the capital region, it's families who have lost jobs, again, because of the economic crisis. It's folks who've lost income because of divorce, illness. It's not because they took on a bad loan. They were encouraged to borrow money because they wanted a better home for themselves, for their families, and as a result, you know, if some little blip happens, right, they can no longer afford their mortgage. These are families that worked incredibly hard to save their home. They tried to negotiate with a bank that they really don't trust anymore. And they started hitting some roadblocks. They weren't getting great information from the lender. And again, once they went to foreclosure, another $2,500 worth of legal fees, really putting them behind the 8 ball. So again, what is so fantastic about this settlement and the Attorney General is his commitment to trying to even the playing field, to help families get the legal services and the housing counseling that they need and deserve, to try to negotiate to be able to keep their home where their family lives. And to try to really counteract, you know, working with a bank that they really don't trust anymore. So again, when we hold legal clinics and have an opportunity for homeowners to meet one-on-one with counselors, with attorneys, you know, their feedback consistently is, thank you for letting me know what my options are. Thank you for the information so that I can make a decision. Really, New York State homeowners deserve the dignity in being able to make a prudent decision. And again, that's what this Attorney General has given us, and we really greatly appreciate all your hard work. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. So to sum up, good deal for America, great deal for New York. And I have to say that it has been terrific to see the working group pull together. Our ability to share resources, share information, has been critical to our success. We were the first office to sue JPMorgan Chase, and our theory was a theory that their due diligence process was broken. They weren't really examining loans as they should have been, and they claimed that they were doing, when they went out to investors, to ensure that the loans were solid and that they were unlikely to default. All of the admissions in other matters, other investigations, really follow that same track. So you should look forward to more in the future from our working group, to more in the future for the people of the state of New York. We're completely committed to the dual tasks of seeing accountability for misconduct and to getting relief for New York homeowners that really need it and for the communities that have suffered as a result of the crash of the housing market.